Welcome to the show, the podcast that dives into the battles women fight on the front lines and within. I'm your host, Olivia Nunn. And this series is proudly sponsored by Mill Mentor, the military community's largest on demand mentorship network, built by veterans for veterans and their families. From job support to networking, find your mentor at millmentor.com. Now let's dive into today's episode where resilience, service, and strength take center stage. This is Women of War, and I'm here with a really good friend of mine, a Pinup for Vets cohort, Jen Bennie, who's in this house we would always say, "Go Army, beat Navy," a Navy vet, but in all intents and purposes, we're on the same team. So, Jen,
Yes,
thanks for being on the show with me.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. Go Navy.
I'm sure we're probably going to be digging here. But like I said, you are a Navy veteran. You've done some pretty cool things. And not only did you do some cool things besides, being a Navy vet and a pinup, but what did you do? I know what you did, but do tell our listeners the really cool thing that you did for us in the Navy.
So I was a Navy pilot. I flew the Navy's version of the Black Hawk, the Army helicopter Black Hawk. We painted silver, call it a Seahawk. And so I flew the Seahawk. I was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. I got my wings 3 days after 9/11, and I was first in my class. So I had beat everybody. And I also was the first swimmer out of the pool, a mile swim in full flight gear, beat everyone. Uh, and so it was one of those things too that I also could always lift a man on my shoulders. I always was middle of the pack when it came to running. I always maxed out push-ups, pull-ups. And so I just never really had any issues when it came to that because I'm a bigger woman. I stand 5'7". I'm pretty I meet all the requirements you need to meet to sit in a cockpit, right? So I really had no issues when it came to the physical side of things, and then the mental side of things, being first in my class. I really felt like that was the moment too that I proved to myself and to my peers that I deserve to be here and I'm meant to be here. My call sign was Yoko because I broke up the band. So the first female, like Yoko Ono broke up the Beatles. I think as far as call signs go, it wasn't so bad. So I took it. It was fine. I mean, not like you have a choice whether you take your call sign or not. But I had a great experience. I went to Iraq. The first time was 9 months. Second time was 10 months, and it was all the things, right? I flew special operations, I flew covert night missions, always NVGs, always on the smaller ships. I was never attached to a big ship, so frigates, cruisers, destroyers, and anytime you launched at night, you didn't know what your mission was going to be. You just kind of knew you were there to support anyone who was out there. So you really had to be prepared for any scenario. Jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I always tell people. It's what we did. You could become a medevac. You could become a search and rescue. You could become a vert rep. You could become given air support to people on the ground. Surveillance. It just really you had to be ready for any scenario every time you flew. So it was fun and exciting in my 20s, and I feel like I had spent my 9 lives. I knew that I wanted to be a mother, and I wanted to eventually get married, but I didn't wanna do those things in the military just because for me, personally, I felt like I couldn't be the best pilot I could be and try to give it myself in those other areas as well. So I got out after my initial commitment, got married about 8 months after that, and had started to have children pretty much right away after that.
So you kind of like went in the military and you just like charged hard. You're like, I'm gonna kick doors and take names while I'm doing it.
Yep.
And you did a lot. And I would say that you and I are a part of the cohort that came in and saw a different side of the military, and we saw a different side of America, right? 9/11, and that changed the landscape for how we saw the military and how the military was going to respond. And it really set the tone in the way we did our everyday life. And it was just this heightened experience every single day, right? It was
Mhm.
like you knew we were at war. Even if you were here at Conus, like you just knew that we were at war. And everything that we're doing was gearing to go over there.
Yeah, so I joined the military before 9/11, right? Because I had gotten the scholarship and wanted to be a pilot and do all the things before 9/11 happened, and I couldn't afford school, but I was smart enough to get the Navy scholarship. I had a full ride to Penn State, paid for by the Navy, and, I was having a great time, right? I'm gonna, like, be a pilot, I'm gonna see the world, this is gonna be so awesome, and I'm in flight school, I'm almost done with flight school, and it was that week right before I got winged. I was winged September 14th. It was that week that I had checked in with my commanding officer. We had made a bet with each other. They had never had a female helicopter pilot, a female pilot in general in Japan. And he told me that if I was first in my class, I would get those orders to Japan. I had checked in with him like the day before 9/11, and I had asked him, "Am I first?" And he's like, "You're first. You're going to Japan." And I was like, "I'm so excited." But then 9/11 happened. My mom is from New York. My mom is from Queens. And so she called me that morning. I'm sleeping in, like my first time I'm sleeping in ever because I'm done with all my flights and they're coming to my winging. And this is in Pensacola, Florida on the 14th. And she calls me and she tells me to turn on the television. And I saw the first plane had hit, right? And I had the first thing I thought of was, were they having an emergency? Was it a malfunction? The plane got too low, right? They couldn't control it. They flew it into a building. It was an accident. But I was on the phone with her when I saw the other plane hit. And that's when I got off the phone. I said, Mom, I got to go. Right. And so our commanding officer had called us all in our winging class. There was about 20 of us. And he told us to meet him at a Waffle House because they had closed all the bases. Right. And so we all went to the Waffle House and he said, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, but the needs of the military supersede anything else that has been happening. And he looked right at me and he goes, Mitchell, because my maiden name was Mitchell. So Top Gun, right? All the Top Gun jokes. And I was Lieutenant Mitchell. Um, Mitchell, you're going to San Diego. They need you in San Diego. I didn't even know what helicopter I'd be flying. I didn't know anything. Just I was needed. And okay, Roger that, right? My whole mindset changed because I joined the Navy to see the world, have college paid for, have a good time. Now I was going to be doing things I had trained for, but really had no expectation for. And
Right.
then I got wings September 14th. My parents had come in. My brother came. I got my wings. Being from New York City, my orders to San Diego was to, I think I had to be there October 1st for SEER school. So I had some time off, had about 2 weeks off. I went up to ground zero with some of my cousins, and we made it there about midnight, and it was still, with the big lights on. They were still doing the search and recovery, and, all the missing posters were up and stuff, and I walked up to a cop, and I asked him, "Where can I get a New York PD patch?" And he told me all the stores are closed right now, and I said, "I understand that, but I'm a Navy pilot, and I'm about to ship out to San Diego. I would really like to fly with a patch," because if you know anything about a flight suit, your one shoulder, you can pick what you want, right? The other shoulder has to have the American flag, but the other shoulder, you can fly with anything you want on it. Usually it's like your squadron patch or something, but it really is up to you. And I wanted to fly with a New York PD patch. And he said, "You're a pilot." And I said, "Yes." And he ripped his patch off his coat and he handed it to me. And I flew with that's what I flew with the whole time. So I kinda I don't know, like, I tell people, like, I just felt very ready to do the job. I felt very confident and ready. I wasn't there had been talk about, like, women maybe being put in to fill quotas, but that was never a thing when I went through, right? It was like you had to earn it. Everything was earned when I went through. So there was no entitlement that I hear because yeah, needed to fill something or right? It was like everyone here earned their position. We're all here. And I felt that way. And the guys I worked with felt that way. I really feel like the only time I ever had any real pushback about my presence was the older guys who had to kind of change for women to come in. But I had a philosophy and I kind of lived by it was like I really don't care how you feel about women in the military. I don't have time. But I will never be your example why women should not be in the military. You will never use me as an example. So that's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah. You know, as you're telling me your story and how your career started, so much so has paralleled mine, right? I was at Officer Basic when September 11 happened. I saw the second plane come in and hit the building. Um, and how exactly what you said. Did I accept that there's a potential that we could go to war when I was a cadet and I signed on to the military? 100%, because we didn't expect that, because I had signed on June 2001. September 11th hadn't happened,
Mhm.
and here we are. I'm actually a second lieutenant in the Army at Officer Basic, and now the trajectory has changed. The landscape has changed, and it's expected now, and
Mhm.
it's definitely different. But it definitely shaped who I am now, right? All of those experiences as a young officer, my 3 tours to Iraq, and I wouldn't change it. It's definitely a tribe, of fellow warriors that I had the honor of serving with. But you said that you felt like it was time to move on because you wanted to get married and to have family, and I know that for many women, that particular conversation or decision is hard. For me, I chose to be a mom way later in life. I was
Mhm.
that field grade officer that started, right? So I'm that old mom.
I'm an old mom
But
too. Yep.
yeah, right? So talk to me about how hard that decision. Was it hard for you? Because there was no part of for me that I wanted to give up, and it wasn't until later, and it was because of being a mother that I was like, "I'm just get me to 20."
Yeah.
I was around year 16, 17. I was like, "Just get me to 20 and I'm gonna be done," because of being a mother. But I couldn't imagine making that choice earlier.
So it was a combination of things. I tell people there were many times I came back. I probably shouldn't have come back. Right? There were many times I landed that helicopter and I kissed the ground, right? I felt like after my second deployment, and I will say this, when I brought all my men back alive, it was my greatest accomplishment. I I anyone under my command came back alive, and that was true for both deployments. And I felt I had done my duty, I had done my job, and I had so much focus on that. And you understand, Olivia, like I don't understand how people can today can like be in the military and do social media because I was working my ass off, right? I was studying. I barely have any pictures of me in the helicopter. I have two that
Yeah.
my mom asked for, right? Like we just didn't do that. We were
Mhm.
working so hard. I was studying so hard. It's not like you get your wings and you're done. There's nothing else to learn, right? It's like you're constantly testing, you're constantly qualifying, you're constantly making sure you're current in everything. You always can get better, and then you're actually doing the things and you're learning the tactics, and it's all the things, right? And like I told you, every time I flew, we didn't know what we were gonna do, so I have to be ready on all these procedures every time. So it's just constant work and studying. So when I got out, I did feel like, gosh, I'm giving up all of that knowledge, right? Like I have my private pilot's license. I have my private instrument rating. I have my private multi-engine rating. Like I have all of the things. I could go right to the airlines, which is what a lot of pilots do because I have all that knowledge in my head. I learned all of it. I've done all of it. I have all that experience, but I it's so hard when you're operating at that level for so long and you've been putting 100% of your life into that. When I knew it wasn't everything I wanted from life, right? I really wanted to be a mother and I really wanted to be uh, there. And I saw the moms kissing their kids goodbye for deployment and leaving. And I mean, I give them a ton of credit. I just knew I couldn't do it, right? I wanted to be all in. And after I had lost people I knew personally, and I felt like this is my chance to live my life and do the things that I want to experience that other people now can't do it. So after you have an initial commitment as a pilot, I think it's 8 years because, they put so much money into you and training you and stuff. And most of the time, if you're gonna re-up after 8, you're gonna stay 20, just like you said, because what's the point, right? Like, after 8, you're gonna go 10, you're gonna go 20. So I knew this was my moment. It's like either I get out now or I'm doing the whole 20 years. So I had I had met Scott on my last deployment. He's my husband. He's active duty now, and we've been married 20 years, and he just made '06, right? And I had met Scott, and he was gonna stay in, and he was gonna transfer to HR, and I felt like and I know people are mill to mill. My parents were mill to mill. I know it can happen, but I just really wanted to I think I had earned it to be home and to be with them and to know what that feels like, right? And I mean, like, we had just gone to war. And what are you defending in war, right? You're defending people's lives. And I wanted to have a life, right? I wanted to know what that felt like to be with my children as they're little and so I got out. I got married about 8 months later. I think we had our first child 4 years after that, but like you, I was older because my 20s were the military, right? And I was geriatric, right?
I hate that they say that to us.
And I right?
They're like, "Your pregnancies are
It's
geriatric."
so
I'm like,
fun. I'm
"I'm
like
not geriatric, dang it."
and I had 3, pretty quick in succession. I had 2 boys at first, and we thought we were done, and then we were like, "We could do it one more time." So I was very geriatric with my 3rd, and I think it's such a blessing. I got to be with them. I got to stay home with them. It was great. Scott's career was enough for us that I got to be with them until they went to school, right? And it was that time I tell people it was a blur because you have them so quickly and you're just, like, in survival mode. Um,
That is so true.
right? It was that
When they're
time
little.
after they went back to school that I started to go, "Who am I again?" Right? Because when you're a mom, it's like no one cares about anything you did professionally or beforehand, right? No one cares about any of that stuff. So I was thinking like, who am I? What do I stand for? What meaning does my life have besides being a mother, which I love and I feel like that's great, but I wanted to do something. And being in the Middle East, as you probably know, Olivia, is like there's so much history there. What's that? Like I remember first time flying in Iraq. What's the history? What's the beef? Right?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is everyone so mad with each other? Right? You're all coming from the same basic area, right? And what is the beef here? So I wanted to know the history. And so that's what I thought I'll use my GI Bill and get a master's degree of history in America because I'd like to know more about that for our country too. And how do historians quantitate history? How do they say this is what happened and this is a primary source and this is, this validates the um the moment in time. And so I wanted to learn how to do that. But I mean, everyone's a historian. It's I tell people it's a degree you can wipe your butt with, right? Because it's like, anybody so can read something and be like, here's the history. But I wanted to know a little bit more and have the credential, right? I think that means
Mhm.
something to me since I got the credential in flying, right? I feel like it means something. And I had the GI Bill. I had I got it while I was in the military and I didn't have children in the military. I couldn't give it to them. So I had to either use it or lose it. And so that's when I went back and got the history degree. And, then what do you do with that? And that's when I started Walk with History, which I bring in the same kind of energy, right? It's like, what is this? And who has a right to tell American history? Does American history, it belongs to all of us. And not one person has any monopoly on who gets to say this is what happened and this is not what happened. And this history belongs to just these people. No, it belongs to all of us. And so I I attack it the same way that it belongs to if you prove yourself and if you do the research and you do the work, it belongs to all of us. And so I kind of have the same mindset with history that I did with aviation.
Absolutely. So let's dig more into your history, but
Mhm.
and before we do that, let's take a word from our sponsor. Mill Mentor is the military community's largest on demand mentorship network built by veterans. You pick your own mentor and as many as you like from over 1,000. Whether you're a military spouse looking for resume help, a veteran building his or her network at a target company, or soon to be transitioning and planning to start a business, there are recruiters, executives, and professionals across the field waiting to help you. Sign up as a mentor or a mentee at millmentor.com. So you're talking about history, and the thing that you said that was really profound to me, and it reminded me of a moment in my second deployment, was history in Iraq. Like, there's history there, and I had this epiphany while sitting at my desk, and because I decided I'm going to read the Bible from
Mm.
front to back. Since I'm gonna be here for 15 months, I'm gonna, like, read this Bible. I'm gonna,
Mhm.
like, spend time. And while I was going through Genesis, I think I must have gotten to, like, 3rd or 4th chapter, and finally I had this epiphany. I went, "Oh my gosh, I'm sitting in the part of the world that so much of this book is talking about."
Yes.
Like, the part of the world, not where America is, but the part of the world that this book is referencing.
Mhm.
And I kinda had to sit with that epiphany, and I had this moment, and I actually kinda cried a little bit. I'm like, "How sad that this book that has so much that people study over, and yet I'm sitting in this place and it's worn torn."
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was where I was sitting at, and I'm like, "How sad is that?" And I've flown over Iraq in so many different parts, and I've seen from the aerial perspective of that country, and it was just so disheartening in that moment. I was really heartbroken, actually.
Well, yeah, and so much of their artifacts are destroyed or have been
Yeah.
destroyed, right? So much of their history and has been destroyed in that regard too, because they've been war torn for so long. It's true though. We were in the location of the beginning, right? I remember going through the Suez and just all of those areas, like they're in the Bible, right? The rivers there. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, these are the people from the beginning of time, and they still can't get it together. It very much is like a Cain and Abel, brother versus brother, still, right? These people are more alike than different. Same thing with Americans, right? We're more alike than different. But we want to push these differences so hard to the point that we're willing to die for them and kill for them. Like, it's just amazing to me. And the same thing, that history, America's only 250 years old, right? This has been going for billion millions of years, right? Or thousands of years. Like, it's just crazy when you think about how much the fighting has ensued over there and keeps going. But yeah, I always felt like, and this is a little off topic, but I'm a big Indiana Jones fan, right? And I love Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they find the Ark, and I love the Last Crusade. And I always felt like they needed to have one with the Garden of Eden, right? Where you try to find the Garden of Eden because maybe the Nazis want to eat from the tree of knowledge, right? So they're trying to find it. And where would that actually be? Because in the Bible, it says it still exists, right? And they put a guard out in front of it. It would probably be in that Middle Eastern area. It would probably be somewhere there. So I always, it's just interesting that
Yeah,
it's all that the the stories of the Bible are actually real. They took place in a real location that we
right.
actually were.
Instead of this, like, ethereal concept, right?
Mhm.
That this was real, and it was written in this place that I'm sitting at.
Mhm.
So, you've gone on and you've started your own podcast series,
Mhm.
and you used what you studied. You certified yourself in being this historian, and you bring, um, pieces of history to life.
Mhm.
And I love the way that you do it, because it's like bite-sized pieces of interesting facts that I think when I think about when I was sitting in school, I'm like, "Oh, I don't wanna learn this. This is so boring." But I love the way that you bring history to life. But I also love the fact that so much of the history that you bring to life are the pieces that aren't in our history books, that our historians don't wanna talk about, especially if it's about women or any other part that, for whatever reason, isn't gonna be talked about. I love that you do that.
Yeah, I lean into the discomfort. I lean into the uneasiness. I do a lot of race, right? I do when I was in my master's program, I uncovered the first documented lynching that happened in Memphis. I wrote the historic marker for it, and I helped with the funding, get it put up in downtown Memphis. So I lean into that discomfort because I really believe justice has no timeline and it never expires. And I believe it belongs to all of us. Justice matters for all of us, and American history belongs to all of us. So the point of Walk with History really is connection. not only for you to personally connect with the past, because the past personally connects with you, whether or not you realize it. You're always influenced by the past. But I want people to get out in their own history, in their own backyard, with their family, with their kids, with a significant other, or even alone, and experience the history that's right there in your own backyard for you. Because everywhere in America has some history that we all personally are impacted by. And so the point of Walk with History was also like to get people out and to get people kind of active and to learn about history, but really to learn about themselves, because history really is something that connects us all and belongs to all of us. No matter if I'm talking about history of the Civil War, history of the Revolutionary War, civil rights history, or if I'm talking about the Battle of Little Bighorn, it doesn't matter where I am in America, it does impact all of us, and we can all personally connect to it. So I wanted people to feel more comfortable with that. And what are the facts of that? What are the primary sources? And I make a point to really not tell you what to think about anything. My job is to tell you how to think. And I think a good historian will do that. And what does that mean? Is I give you the facts, all of them. I'm not cherry picking any facts to point you towards a thesis or point you towards an idea. I'm giving you all of the facts, and you decide what you think about that. You have a brain and you can decide your feelings on that. My job is just to make sure you have all the facts and you trust that I'm giving you all the facts. And so I make a point to be really um, to really protect that and to really do that well. And so much so, if you watch some of my videos, I've been accused of being left leaning and right leaning for the same video, right? I have people, I had a fellow pinup vet who came to me. He's like, I don't know where you stand politically, Jen. And I'm like, good, because you shouldn't know where I stand politically, right? That should have no bearing. I'm not trying to do confirmation bias in any way when I give you history. It belongs to all of us equally. And what you see and what you hear really depends on what you see and hear. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these are the facts and belongs to all of us.
So, what do your kids and what does your spouse, because you said he's still in,
Mhm.
think of this journey that you've created for yourself, that as a historian, and how you bring this to life? Like, how do they view their mommy, or, his wife?
Sure. So Scott produces all the videos. Scott produces the podcast. Scott does all of the tech stuff. I don't know how any it's good. I don't know how any of this works, right? He set this all up. He loves it. He just bought a camera. We're going to start shooting a documentary about the VFW, right? So he really loves that. And that's what he really wants to get into, more film and editing. He hates history. And every time he's making a video or producing it, he's always like, "Oh, I have to look up these pictures." He doesn't like anything if it's really graphic. He's very good about making sure everything is accurate, and he does a very good job. And I look at everything before it goes out to make sure. But he'll say stuff like, "I'm cutting this. It's boring," and I'm like, "You can't cut that. That's an important part of history. That's an important connector." And he goes, "But it's so boring." I said, "Not to historians, Scott." So we have arguments about that sometimes. My kids hate it too. They are always like, "Mom, another history thing," but they've seen some of the rewards of it. They learned about Rosa Parks in school, and my daughter was able to say, "My mom took me there. My mom took me to where Rosa Parks, got on the bus." And they're able to talk to certain things. My one son had to do the Nat Turner Rebellion, and I took him to where the Nat Turner Rebellion took place, and I talked to him about what's going on and why is Nat Turner feeling it's a sign from God, and like we talked all about that. And so he was able to show his teacher like the locations and everything. So I try to bring history more to life for them, and they're appreciating it. My oldest is a freshman in high school. He's taking a videography class and he's doing really well because he's come with us and helped us sometimes hold the camera and frame the shot. So he's doing well in that class because he's already had some of that as he's been with us on our things. But no, my kids do not think it's cool. My husband hates history. But I used to point at helicopters and be like, "Mommy flew that," and they didn't think that was cool either, so, you know.
They'll come around. I'm laughing over here because my kids are the same, right? They're younger than yours, but because I do social media,
Mhm,
like that's my thing, right? And social media and podcasting and pageantry. And so my kids are like, "Oh, mom, another photo. We got to stand here and pose again. You need me to hold another frame and do another picture." I'm like, "Yes, just do it." Right?
mhm.
So I'm laughing over here because my kids could probably have quite a few stories with yours and talk about what their mom makes them do.
Yes, it's funny.
Um, so and also it just makes me laugh because I make Topaz be the behind the scenes videographer and
Mhm.
he's always walking around and it's that meme, like you're on vacation, but he's always working. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yep.
pretty much. Pretty much. You know, you did your 8 years. You found, the path that you want to walk, which is, being a historian and bringing history to life. Is there any part of you that misses a part of the former military life? Do you miss wearing the boots at all?
So, like I said, I miss using all that knowledge. Like, where does it go? Right? It's just slowly going away. I miss using that knowledge. I Pilots are so funny. I miss the humor, right? Flying 8 hours every night, like, the jokes were the best jokes, really. I miss flying at night over, like, San Diego, right? It was just so beautiful being able to do that, flying at, golden hour, right at dusk, like, it really was beautiful to do that. So being able to do that and to be the pilot and, like, yeah, you can fly on a plane, look out the window, that's great, but when you're the pilot and you have all of it out in front of you and you're the one controlling it, like, I miss that. Uh, when it comes to being a female in the military, and you probably know this, I feel like you're always on, and I feel like I'm constantly modeling, and I cannot have an off day, right? And so I constantly had to be a model, and I recognized that early on, and I took that seriously and really tried to be the best mentor for the other women. I was senior ranking female on my last ship, right? And so I kinda missed that mentorship as well. Like, women could come to me and ask me questions, and I would hold women accountable, and I would teach men how to hold women accountable. So, I miss that, but I also felt like it's hard to be on all the time, right? It's sometimes you want a break too. So like I said, when I got out after my 8 years, as much as I may miss certain things, I don't regret it at all.
You said two things that I'm just like, yes, 100%. And being on.
Mhm.
Um, I for me, it was such a sense of perfectionism. That's what I was always working for. And I had such a fear of failure. A lot has to do with the culture, being Korean,
Mhm.
and also the military culture. We talk about that failure is part of the plan and it's okay, but not really.
Mhm.
We brief that, but that's not really what they want. They want perfection. They want success. And I had such a fear of failure and I felt like I had to be on. And whether it was something I put on myself or because I felt it or that I just knew that if I didn't perform better than the person next to me, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the comments. I'm going to get that I'm not supposed to be here. I'm going to get the attitude from them, or this position's not going to be mine, or the next one's not going to be mine. And it was this constant pressure of I have to come to work looking the best and performing the best. And that is exhausting.
It's exhausting. And I will say too, Olivia, I don't know how you felt, and this really is something I push back a lot against. They've really reinforced this competition against women. Right?
Yeah.
And I hate that because I don't wanna dislike a woman just because she's a woman, right? Like, what is she's not trying to take something from me, and they almost push. I remember the guys trying to pit me against another girl who's a really good friend of mine and be like, "Oh, Jen, you're here, she's here." And I would just laugh at them. Like, "You're not gonna make me compete with her. She is my friend. Like, I love her." And I'm still friends with her to this day. Like, um, I didn't like that. Now, I will say, like I tell people, did I meet women who tried to sabotage my career? Yeah, I did. Early on, I met them too. And I learned right away, you have to watch sometimes. Some women do want to get ahead by pushing you down, right? And so you got to be a little careful with how much you let people know and your vulnerabilities, right? Because some people might try to, but men do that too, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's the same with men and women. And there were men who supported my career just as much as there were women who supported my career. But I'm not going to compete against a woman just because she's a woman, right? And I learned that early on that I wanted to not only model for women, but know that we're in this together. We not doesn't mean I always agree with every woman. It doesn't mean don't think I should hold another woman accountable. That's not true at all. But I honestly also feel like I know what it's like to be a woman in the military. Like I have this kinship with you. And I don't want this undue competition. Like we're not what are we competing? What are we competing for? What are we going to win? Like so I push back against that, but I find the military really tries to do that with other women. Like even with women who are like in combat roles and how much did you do or how much did you deploy? Like it's like no, like I'm not competing. No. It's not I'm not playing that game. So I try not to get pulled into that. Um 'Cause I don't think it's healthy for us women, and I think that only benefits the men as they sit back and watch us do that, and I don't want to be a part of that, and that's also exhausting. So
You talk about that, and as you're talking about that, I thought about I was replaying my career,
mhm,
and I'm like, "Yeah, that is so true," and I didn't really think about it, but I think the part to that is mentorship.
mhm,
How there is a lack of mentorship readily available for women
mhm,
from other women to provide that, right? To say, "Hey, don't be in competition with other women. Uplift other women." And you're going to get this type of pressure from men around you because they want to sit there and watch you fail for whatever reason, whether they believe that women shouldn't be
mhm,
there or just because you're just going to be the office entertainment or whatever it's going to be. But I think that the bigger collective problem is that as you rise through the ranks, whether you're enlisted or an officer, there is less of us. So there is less of us to look left and right and say, I need help. I need support. I need kinship in what you are going through. And who do I get that from? Because so many of us choose to exit for whatever reason.
mhm.
And then what I often see is who's left at the top for whatever reason are just hardened
Yeah.
and just kind of gatekeep that information and just really don't want to share.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, I will say that, like, I'm just like I understand that, Olivia, I didn't have any female I had one female mentor, she's now a rear admiral, um, I was in the RAG, that's what they call where you fly your helicopters, you're gonna fly in the fleet, but you haven't fleeted up yet, you're learning to fly that fleet, so it's when I learned how to fly the Seahawk after flight school, and it's the only time I had a female flight, I had flown with her, and we were flying together and she asked me, how's it going?" And I said, "I have this one lieutenant who won't stop calling me." Who was in and I wasn't a lieutenant at the time, I was a JG. So I like an O 03 was calling me. I was O 02, right? Um, and I said, "I just ignore his phone calls. I don't even know. I don't know what to say. And I just like, I don't want to deal with it." Another thing we have to deal with in the military, right? And she said, "Who is it?" And I told her his name and she goes, "I'll take care of it." And I never heard from that guy again. And she did. And I always thought to myself, I'm gonna be like her. Right. And like I said, she's a rear admiral now. like, I'm gonna be like her. I think she was the first female commander of an aircraft carrier. Um, and sometimes I think the military gets it right when they promote women. Like you said, sometimes the women that stick around are not the best women and they get promoted and you're like, okay, you know, they that's what the Navy's doing, great, or that's what the military is doing. But they got it right with her, and I write her sometimes, and I tell her what she meant to me, and she appreciates that. And I check in with her and stuff. But that's the kind of mentor I wanted to be. I wanted if someone came to me, I have a problem, I'll take care of it, I'll fix it, and I know probably the same way you feel, Olivia. When I hear about women who've had real bad experiences in the military, like something had happened to them and they didn't have anyone they could turn to, I that really gut punches me because as a leader, I feel like I should I someone like me should have been there for them. They should have had someone like me there because I would not have let any of that slide, right? But I also feel like there was, it's hard to take all that responsibility upon yourself, especially then flying and then, all your job, your, combat job, and then, being operational and then taking the mentorship upon yourself. It's a lot. And so I know maybe getting out after 8 years was a little bit of a cop out in that regard, but I felt like it's hard to stay at that level and be that on, uh, for a full 20 years, like, that's very difficult to do, and so I was probably, like, I wasn't ready to give it all of that and try to be a mother at the same time, but, yeah, I
Yeah.
do think there's a lack of mentorship. I was part of a study once, um, about PTSD. Right? So my men, none of them have PTSD. I don't have PTSD. And we did all the things you can think of. We did them, right? And the lady had asked me, why do you not think your guys have PTSD? And I said, well, because I debriefed every flight. We come back from a flight. I'd be like, we're meeting in the hangar bay in an hour. Go get something to eat. Go take a shower. We're gonna talk about this flight. And we did that because I needed to talk about it. Right? I needed to work through in my mind the things that happened. And yeah, you're given rules of engagement and you're giving, rules of war. But when things happen real time, you're making quick decisions, right? And I wanted to alleviate a lot of my men from any kind of responsibility they would feel that it was my decision and it was my order. And so we had all those conversations and we worked through them and we talked through episodes and things that happened. And I feel like those conversations and that talking and all of us how we felt and what we saw and what that felt like to see it, I feel like that really helped us process a lot of trauma before we even went home. And so I remember being in the study and she said, "Well, why do you think you were able to do that?" And I said, "Because I was the boss." And, I think there does need to be more women in that leadership capacity because they couldn't say, "I'm not coming to the brief," or "I don't wanna talk about it," and you could I told you, I ordered you to be there, so you have to be there, and we're talking about it, so you might as well engage and talk about it, and I think that made everyone feel safe to talk about this. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
real time in theater, so I do think that did make a difference.
No, as you say that, I 100% agree with that. If you can unpack some of the emotional, mental, and physical trauma right there on the spot, wi will it work for everybody, and will it be the fix for everybody, and will you say that you're gonna walk away with 0 trauma?
Mhm.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But will it help? I think 100%. I think about how I was assaulted by my own platoon sergeant during my first deployment. And while I reported that to my chain of command, and they wanted to do the right thing, but they struggled with supporting me. And not only that, they struggled as men supporting a woman because I was in tears.
Mhm.
I was so broken and in tears. I was distraught because I had been physically assaulted. And that's uncomfortable. That is an uncomfortable situation for them, for me. And if there was a place, a training, and a way in which they could have been equipped as leaders to be able to handle that. and say, you know what, I need to be a better leader for my service member because I am the senior. I've been in this military longer. I understand the situation. I understand the laws, and this is how I'm going to help. Because right now, my particular service member doesn't understand everything. And being able to emotionally be there could have made the world so much different for me, right? I had to
Mhm.
unpack that 20 years later.
Yeah. I hate that. I hate hearing that kind of stuff because I feel like that's the kind of mentorship that women could give. And I always say I saw guys cry much more than I ever saw women cry. It's the truth.
And again, I don't want to light this as if my leaders didn't care or that they,
Sure.
but it's
Sure.
one of those that they were ill-equipped, and because
Mhm.
they're ill-equipped, they didn't know how to best
Yeah.
be the best leader for me. And I feel like that is the same story for many leaders across the military when it comes to sensitive topics.
Mhm.
But that's just my personal opinion.
No, I agree. I don't they just don't prepare you for that. They prepare you for everything else, not the aftermath, right? And I mean, again, I think it was just very human of me in the moment and young. I'm in my 20s when this is all I needed to really unpack these things, right? Because I'm making decisions in the aircraft that ultimately are life and death, and I could lose my career if I make the wrong call. Right? I always tell people, I'm the one at the end of the long table if something happens. I'm the one who could lose my wings. I'm the one who's ultimately firing the weapon, right? It's not could be anybody on the radio saying weapons free. It doesn't matter. I'm the one pulling the trigger, right? You don't when you think of Paul Tibbets, dropping the atomic bomb, you think of Paul Tibbets. You don't think of who ordered him to do it, right?
Right.
Like, and so as a pilot, you really have to think about, like, you're ultimately responsible. So I don't know if I felt ultimately responsible for my men and their humanity and how they process the trauma, but I felt responsible for mine. And I felt responsible for working through my stuff. And I wanted to work through it as a crew since we were operating as a crew. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it was just, again, the human side and the youth side, but it was just very basic, like connection, kind of how I still see Walk with History, like the talking and talking through it and working through it. I had to work through it. I'm a verbal processor, right? And so I made us do that. Right. And so I feel like you could benefit from that. But like you said, I feel a lot of people are the military doesn't really equip you for that. They don't really equip you for the aftermath of what they're asking you to do.
Yeah. Jen, I could spend hours talking with you. In fact, this just reminds me of our time when we were in California doing
Yeah.
the pinup calendar, and we did spend hours
Mhm.
talking. But you know, I love what you're doing. I love how you bring history for us. And with that being said, how can people follow you?
So I am pretty much everywhere except TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Walk with History. I'm on Facebook, Walk with History. My YouTube channel is Walk with History, and the podcast is Talk with History. So it makes it very easy to go to Talk with History if you're interested in that. But you can find me on any platforms you can get podcasts. And we have new videos every Wednesday for Walking Wednesday, and it's on location history, and new podcasts every Monday. And usually they're more in depth to the episode, especially if you want to visit, how to visit, where to go, where to park, what to eat while you're there. But sometimes we do interviews with certain historic people or books or things along that nature. And so it's just a really great way to connect. It's safe to listen to in the car with families. So if you're driving somewhere with your family and you're like, let's listen to this podcast before we go so we know what to see, you can listen as a family and it's safe. Everything, the wording is all safe. And try to make it fun and quick, about 30 minutes, but it helps you if you're going to go somewhere, give you travel tips about what you want to see and do.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you so much for spending time with me, sharing a little bit about your story, and yeah, and just kind of going down memory lane with me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Women of War, proudly sponsored by Mill Mentor, where the military community finds its mentors. Until next time, keep showing up, speaking out, and standing strong.